What is going on, everybody? My name is Kneeckoh, and welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet VGC Moveset Guide video. Today, we are going to be talking about the new legendary Pokemon from the Hisui region we can use, Enamorus. Now, if you are familiar at all with VGC to any capacity, you would know that the Genies have historically been very good Pokemon to use in competitive. It is just very, very solid as a trio, but now Enamorus continues that trend. Enamorus is going to be one of the best Pokemon that you can use in Regulation D, and I'm going to talk about why today. So if this is your first time here on the channel, make sure you are subbed for more videos like this in the future, but let's get into it. So Enamorus has two forms, much like all the Genies, and both of them are incredibly solid. There are a couple of the Genies where you're really only using one form or the other, but Enamorus, both forms have pretty significant roles that they could play, and I think it's really interesting. So first and foremost, we have just the standard Enamorus, and then we'll talk about Enamorus Therian form. So first up, this Pokemon is really, really unique and honestly a little bit gimmicky, I'm not gonna lie, because of its ability Contrary. If this Pokemon has a stat change raised, it is lowered instead, and vice versa. So if you lower a stat, it will actually be raised, which is really, really interesting. Because of this, there is some cheeky stuff you can do with the new Pokemon that have been added, and it allows you to really invest more into your bulk and speed rather than having to worry about your special attack per se, because you can just activate Contrary and start doing massive amounts of damage. It also allows you to run something like an Assault Vest to increase that special defense and allow you to be even bulkier without necessarily having to run something like a Life Orb or other attack boosting items. Really gives this Pokemon a solid footing. So the biggest strategy that you're going to be seeing with this, and that has been popping up, is you run Enamorus with Contrary. The Terra type can vary. You could run like Fire, or you can run Ground to maximize your Earth power. Things like that are going to be really solid for this Pokemon. I have it just left on Fairy because I hadn't messed with it. In terms of moves that you can run, you have Moonblast, obviously, big damage. You love to see it. Springtide Stored is really nice. It lowers the attack of the opposing Pokemon by 1. It is 80% accurate, but it is a spread move, so take that with what you will. Earth Power is there for, you know, coverage options because you are a flying type, gives you coverage into ground types. And then also we have Sludge Bomb here. Now, I feel that Sludge Bomb is fairly interchangeable. I threw it there because I think that Enamorus is going to be a Pokemon that pops up a lot, along with Fluttermane. I think both Pokemon still show up a fair bit. So I think that Sludge Bomb, having something for that coverage, is really, really solid. But there is the option to run Mystical Fire, and in that scenario, I just say run Terra Fire. Really give yourself the advantage over a lot of the Steel-type Pokemon running around. So that's definitely an option. I think that is a fairly interchangeable move that you can swap out on your Pokemon. So the strategy in terms of a teammate that you run with Enamorus normal form is Thundurus. Now, the reason that you'd run a Thundurus next to this thing is you run like a bulky Thundurus. Let me pull one from one of my other teams I've been working on. You run like a bulky Thundurus, and you put it next to this Pokemon, right? And you have Eerie Impulse. It lowers the target's special attack by 2, but with Contrary, this is actually going to raise your special attack by 2. So off rip, you just immediately start doing crazy amounts of damage because you Eerie Impulse into your Contrary Pokemon. This is absolutely crazy. It really boosts the amount of damage that you can do. It's just such a strong combo. It is gimmicky in a sense, but it makes sense. Because of the ability to have Prankster on this, you're able to just kind of start rolling. You're able to start doing things with this Pokemon off the rip and just do crazy amounts of damage. So this is going to be a very common combination of Pokemon that you're going to see. Thundurus next to Enamorus. It's going to be very, very, not necessarily with this particular moveset. This was for a specific team I had built. But yeah, Eerie Impulse into Enamorus is going to be something that you're going to see a lot of. And it's going to be very, very good. Now, there are other ways you could build it. You could obviously throw like a Citrus Berry or other items on this particular Pokemon. But I just think the Assault Vest gives it so much extra bulk without having to necessarily put a ton of stats into that bulk. I really, really like it for that reason. Now, talking about Enamorus Therian form, this is a Trick Room Pokemon through and through, let me tell you. And its stat distribution is really good. So 74 HP with 115 attack, it's something you'd probably not want to see. But anyways, 110 defense, 135 special attack, and 100 special defense with 46 speed. this is a fantastic Pokemon that I definitely think we're going to see pop up a lot next to Ursaluna. Now, the reason I say Ursaluna is because, you know, Ursaluna is also incredibly slow, but also loves to spam those nice earthquakes with a Flame Orb Guts, right? You're going to want to see a lot of that. But another Pokemon that's going to pair incredibly well with Ursaluna is going to be Cresselia. Cresselia is actually really good in this particular format because Dynamax doesn't exist. Cresselia really struggled in the Dynamax formats because it just kind of got annihilated by everything. But without Dynamax and having the ability to tear away from its weaknesses, Cresselia being a bulky Trick Room setter is really, really solid again. And with Levitate makes it a perfect partner for Ursaluna. So pair this with Enamorus Therian as well, and you have 3 Pokemon that synergize incredibly well. Like, just super well. You can, if you're going to take big damage on Cresselia, you could rotate in Enamorus Therian and still be able to EQ with Ursaluna, right? So there's a lot of really solid synergy there. Also, if you consider the fact that, you know, Ursaluna doesn't like taking a fighting type attack, you rotate in Enamorus Therian and you eat that so well because you're fairy flying, you're in a really strong spot. So there's a lot of synergy between these 3 Pokemon, and I definitely think that that's a combo that you're going to see a lot of. Now, in terms of its ability, Overcoat is fantastic. It makes you just automatically immune I started saying the name, but it makes you immune to Amoonguss. So that is something that's really, really solid. You're immune to Sandstorm damage as well, but like being able to just ignore Amoonguss outright is very, very solid. But then you also, with the insane bulk that you have, you can really just kind of start rolling with like going for Moonblast, Calm Mind to get that special defense up. And that's kind of the spread that I have here. We have max HP with a fair chunk of defense and minimal special attack and special defense investment. And that's just because you have access to Calm Mind. You can start boosting that on your own. You have leftovers here as well. Fire Terra type just for defensive purposes. And then you're able to just kind of earth power any electric type damage you might encounter, things like that. So I think that both of these Pokemon are going to be incredibly solid and are going to be very, very large threats in the format. However, we do got to talk about some Pokemon that are going to be problems for these two. Specifically, I think like Hisui and Goodra comes to mind because this Pokemon's going to be very good. Hisui and Goodra is actually going to be a fairly decent problem for these, especially standard Enamorus. Being able to just come in with a heavy slam, or even what else is surely it gets Flash Cannon. It does get Flash Cannon. So having the option to just hit this very hard for a steel type attack is pretty big. But also just this Pokemon is incredibly special defensive. So it just could kind of sit in front of Enamorus and not have to worry about it. Now, granted, you are going to have to consider that these are likely going to run Earth Power. Goodra is weak to that, but I think a lot of them are going to end up being like Terra Water or something, and you're not going to have to worry about that weakness at all. This thing is just a wall that's going to sit in front of these 2 Pokemon and be able to hit them for really hard damage. On top of Goodra, I think like Iron Bundle is still something you have to consider just because of the fact that, you know, it is the fastest thing in the format. You need to be concerned about that, and Bundle is able to just force a Terra. Same goes for Regieleki, honestly. You're able to just kind of force a Terra. Regieleki obviously being the weaker option of the 2 simply because of the fact that, again, we are talking about Earth Power on these 2 Pokemon. Earth Power is going to be very good. So having the ability for Iron Bundle to just sit out in front of these Pokemon and just blast them away, very, very solid. It, again, forces a Terra, especially on normal Enamorus, which is going to be playing in a faster scenario where you're likely to run into a lot of Bundle. This is a problem, so you have to be very cautious of that fact. Their Bundle is still going to be a huge threat, and Regieleki also going to be a problem, but less so, I'd argue, than a Bundle. I think Heatran is going to be a huge problem for this. Heatran is just crazy. I think Heatran's actually going to be incredibly good. Mainly because of its typing. Fire Steel is really solid. Think about the very powerful Pokemon that we have right now. You're looking at things like Fluttermane, now Enamorus. You know, what does an Enamorus do to a Heatran? And you're like, oh, well, obviously it just hits it with an Earth Power. No, because we have Flash Fire. So obviously we're a Terra Grass Pokemon every time. And being able to hit things with Flash Cannon on this thing is going to be absolutely crazy. This Pokemon is going to be so freaking strong in this new format. I really, really like Heatran, and I think it's going to be just one of the better picks that you can bring going into Regulation D, and maybe I'll make a separate moveset guide talking about it, because I do think it's traditionally been a very good Pokemon. It was less so in the Dynamax format, but moving into like previous generations way back, I think it was just always a constant in terms of being a powerhouse, and I think that having terrestrialization gives it that spot back. So I definitely think that Heatran is going to pop up a lot and can be a serious threat for these two Pokemon in particular. So those are just some of my thoughts on Enamorus, both Therian and normal form. I just wanted to talk about this Pokemon because I do think it's going to be extremely good in the format, and I just think it's going to be something that's popping up a fair bit. Now, I will say that this is one of the most annoying Pokemon to get right now in terms of having like really good speed stat for the Trick Room setup, because of the fact that you have to catch the Pokemon in Legends Arceus, then transfer it into Pokemon Legends or into Pokemon Home to be able to even check its EVs. There's no way to soft reset this Pokemon over and over and over to check the EVs, making it probably the most unhealthy Pokemon in the meta. This is going to be a constantly gen Pokemon, which I personally don't care. If you're genning your Pokemon, as long as they have legal stats, I don't care what you're doing, but this is going to cause a huge genning problem. Just in general, honestly, this whole format is because a lot of players that are maybe new, started in Sword and Shield, don't have access to a lot of older games, or maybe even have started in Scarlet and Violet and started playing, don't have access to the older games, don't want to go buy the older games. Why would they want to buy older games just to get the legendaries? It doesn't make a lot of sense for them to, when they could just gen it. So honestly, this is going to cause a lot of problems, and that's just my thought on that scenario. But I think this is going to be the big contender for people genning constantly. This is going to be just very popular as a gen target, because getting this as a decent speed stat for your Trick Room teams is going to be impossible in Legends Arceus. So that's just something that you have to consider. But like I said, that's my thoughts on Enamorus. I think it's going to be really, really solid in this format. So I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you did, leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this in future. Check out the Discord. People over there hanging out, playing Pokemon all the time. If you want to see anything else from me, make sure you check out any of these videos that you see here on screen. But until next time, peace.